Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and welcome to the Post 73, Martin James and Diverse Futures. Now, as you know, every year for about the last decade, we've had a Christmas vlog, a Christmas post, where I share with you an extraordinary human being who's going to share ideas and attitudes and experiences for you to reflect on, for you to think about through this Christmas period. And wow, have I got a wonderful Christmas present for you this year. Professor Martin James is a mate of mine. He's a friend of mine. He's been with me through good times and through bad times, but he can share a great deal about the nature of being an international scholar with us today. He's brilliant, obviously. He's one of the best teachers I've ever seen, but he's also compassionate and also compassionate and caring for his friends and for his students. Now, currently, Martin is at Coventry University, but he is probably best known and internationally famous for the great innovations he enacted at Southampton's Solent University. He's now still an emeritus with emeritus status there now. But his work there demonstrated the gift and the power of teaching excellence when it's meshed with research excellence. He won so many teaching awards and teaching fellowships, but he was also and is also an incredible researcher and an incredible writer. But how he came into academic life and his status in academic life in our present is worth the storytelling, is worth the tale. And that's where we're going to start today. So, Martin, thank you for joining me through this incredibly busy end of semester, end of term for you in the United Kingdom. How are you, brother?
I'm great, thanks. And I feel like I should address the set a bit more Christmassy, but hey,
The set is, look, I'm wearing enough red for both of us, but can I say
yeah,
your set is beautifully configured for what we're going to talk about. And look, I wanted to start, academic life is so volatile at the moment, and all of us have had different pathways into and perhaps out of academic life. But could you tell us a little bit about how universities found you and you found universities?
wow. So I've got to really rewind back to school because school completely failed me. I left school without any qualifications whatsoever, apart from art, an art O level, as we used to call them. Um, and I had to go back down a year to redo stuff, and then eventually got an A level. And that was it. That was me with academia for life. And I was going out with a girl who'd done her degree at Oxford, and I was with all these guys from Oxford and thinking, do you know what? I don't think I'm thick. I don't think I don't understand what they're talking about. In fact, I'm very happily keeping up the conversation and joining in and whatever. Um, and then around about the age of 25, 26, I decided, you know, I'm going to go and see if I've got a brain. So I went and got a brace of A levels and then went, I'll go to university. Now, I'd like to say it was completely about the learning, the university at that stage, but actually I was also in a band, and the dole were trying to get me into any old job. And so part of it was tactically trying to avoid having to sign off. Here's something to do for another 3 years. Well, actually, it was the best 3 years of my life. It was just an incredible thing. I was living in Nottingham. So I was very involved in the Nottingham music scene, and I ran a magazine there with a friend about the local culture, local arts, and went to university and kind of discovered this other side to things. Going, wow, this amazing thinking, this philosophy, this it was one of the first communication studies degrees. So it's very focused on critical theory, a bit of psychology, a bit of sociology. So there's a lot of things put together, which again suited the way my the way I think. Um, and but then when I finished that, I kind of I spent my time studying, but also using it to get my job. So, so when I graduated in 1992, I walked out into a record label job. It was like a really bad year for economically. I handed in my dissertation on the inherent racism of hip hop, US versus UK. So it's about how UK hip hop was being ignored. That was back in 1992.
Yeah.
Um, and then I walked into a job in the music industry on the Monday after I submitted. And I just initially as a press officer, and then I decided I didn't really like that. I had been writing, like I said, running a magazine with a friend, and then I started writing for Melody Maker. I'll tell you more about that later, but
Yeah.
I honestly didn't think I'd have anything to do with academia again beyond occasionally picking up a book. And then my friend Sean Albies, who I make music with now, he contacted me about some research he was doing on a Sex Pistols gig at Leicester Free Trade Hall. And then he contacted me again about some research he was doing on French music. And I'd just published a book called French Connections. And he invited me in to do a lecture, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I soon after that we moved to the northeast of England for family reasons, and I got in touch with the local with Sunderland University, and I got invited in to do a lecture, and it then said, "Will you hang on a little while? Somebody's ill. Will you fill in for them?" And I was hooked. That was it. Hook, line, and sinker. I'm in, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved um, the teaching side of it. I love the trying to understand what teaching was. That's a process coming out of industry into teaching. Who knew you don't just talk about yourself all the time? And there are still people that do that, believe me. Um, I was really, really fortunate. It was a dual experience, I've got to say. On the one hand, I came into to journalism teaching um, with a team largely made up of local newsroom journalists with no interest or respect for um, research, analysis, etc., and even less respect for music journalism. I'm sitting there with a number of books under my belt, having been got to the level of editor in chief in two in a publishing company in the UK and the US, and also having had cover features for the Guardian, the Independent, the number of, as well as having all these editorial positions in the national music press. And I'm sitting there going, why are you talking down to me? So the journalism team absolutely rejected me as a journalist, which was really interesting, except for one guy who was a brilliant, brilliant investigative journalist. And he got it. He understood what I was about. But at the same time, I was sharing an office with an amazing scholar called Angela Smith. She's a linguist. And we were talking about the film Betty Blue with Beatrice Dahl and
Yeah.
Jean-Laurent Glad. And I just started talking about this what I love about the film, how the color starts to degrade as you watch the film. And she said, "Why aren't you doing theory? Why aren't you?" And I said, "Well, okay." So she said, "Do a master's now." And that was it. I signed on to the master's. Halfway through that, Professor John Story said, "Come and do a PhD and do it by publication," which was very new at that stage.
Was.
So I was kind of,
Was.
it was a bit sort of trailblazy. Nobody quite knew how to do it, and it was a really interesting process. Um, and so I did that. And by that stage, I'm locked in. Then Sean, the wonderful Sean Albies, got back in touch with me again. Said I'm setting up the music uh, area at Solent in Southampton, and would you like to come down? There's a job coming up. I really want you to apply for it. And that was, I walked in. What an amazing team, wonderful people I respect, and the hardcore of that team, and there's loads of us have worked together. With some amazing academics came out of the team, but we're all really, really locked in with each other still, and really close because we kind of have that mutual respect, which I haven't experienced anywhere else.
See,
So that's
that's remarkable to me. And I think you've helped me so much there, Martin, because obviously you and I are both doing work on popular culture and popular cultural studies and what the hell happened to it. And that narrative you've just told me, I think will help the planet understand why popular cultural studies has died in some ways, because right from the start, even in journalism programs, it was configured as low art, as low and less significant and less important. So through the Solent experience, you were able to centre its study with credibility in teaching and research. I think that's remarkable. And look, we've already talked about your career as a writer, your career as a journalist, and we need to talk about, the state of base. We need to talk about French connections, which you've already mentioned. And, We Rhythm is probably, I mean, it's the book that changed the world, and you wrote it. And I often wonder how that must feel. You did that. My late husband, who was a great friend of yours, Steve Redhead, did that. Both of you wrote books that changed the world. Now, that's astonishing. You are a gift to the planet. So, could you talk a little bit about the gift of writing books, but particularly the challenges of writing books in what I describe as a post-reading age?
I might describe it as a curse rather than a gift. Um, the issue, it's a funny thing. One, I find it kind of interesting when you say that the book changed the world or changed things, because I think academics are in the business of changing lives all of the time, and the process of that particular book was, here's a form of music I love. I love it, but I don't understand why I love it. But there's something incredibly visceral. So it's experimental, it's emotional music, and it's machine-made music,
Yeah.
and but very human machine-made music, and kind of went against a lot of the arguments against machine-made music. But I really wanted to make it so it was accessible to people who might accidentally come across one of these tunes, Goldie, or one of the the most famous artists, and trying just to uncover it a bit. So without going into depth about the minutiae of the musicology of drum and bass, I really wanted to sort of say, well, this is how the movement, this is the sociology of this, this is how it happened, how it emerged, and this is what it becomes. Um, so that people can have just that more of an in-depth understanding, rather than it became a cliche that it was a performing music that came out of the raves. Well, it didn't just come out of the raves. It had as much to do with the pop group in Bristol as it did. It had this huge post-punk energy coming through it. It was about British youth culture. And it's about what happens with British youth culture when the cultural industries aren't trying to shape it. Cultural industries, creative industries, leave people alone. Let people flourish and grow without saying, we've just discovered a new scene. Let people develop before some big BBC come in and do a documentary on it, which is ironically, I'm writing a book about it. But the idea of the book then is also, it was on Box Tree. And the Box Tree were doing these really fast
Yeah.
turnover. It was they were trying to get, remember the Skinhead series of really short, sharp, fast written books? Was it Stuart Home, I think? And they were trying to capture the same sort of essence, capture the essence of club life, capture the essence of the ecstasy generation. Here, you've got a month to write it. Bam, go. And it was the same guy behind that said, "Do you want to write? You interested in doing this project?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, it's not an academic project. I don't want in depth in that way, but at the same time, I want you to bring it to life. So in that case, it's an entirely theoretical piece of work,
Yeah.
you know." And what was really exciting was I found it very hard to talk to people whilst I was writing it until it came out. Then all the junglists and the drum and bass people were saying, "Wow, oh my God, why didn't you approach me?" And yeah, I spoke to a lot, but not enough. And I said, "Well, I did, but you didn't want to talk to me at that time, and I don't blame you because I was a part of the untrustworthy mainstream media machine who have already ripped you off throughout the early stages of your career." And but it brought people on side, which was fantastic. There is a longer life to this. Um, so I found myself becoming an advocate for it. So I'd be if they wanted Doctor such and such to talk about drum and bass or 90s urban youth culture, I'd be dragged out. And I'd always say the same thing that jungle drum and bass became from particular spaces of London. It spread very quickly because of that's the nature of the accelerated era that we were moving into. But it was simultaneously black and white in the sense that it was coming from poverty or from the working class at a time where working class was in more multi-ethnic environments in inner city spaces, not like how Britain became in the 2000s, but in the 90s it was still a very multi-ethnic environment.
Yeah, yeah,
And so many years later the narrative became entirely changed, so the history has been of drum and bass has been changed, and jungle as and for me the fascinating thing about history is how it grows and reshapes, and it's being reshaped right now by a number of different cultural powers. Um,
yeah.
and when the reissue of the book came out, I got cancelled.
Yeah.
I got cancelled because what does a white professor know about jungle? A white old professor know about jungle? I was like, well, I was there. Um, that was my life for that.
Yeah.
And it actually took lots of the original DJs and promoters and people to come up, get onto Twitter and say, no, Martin is for real. He's just gone on and done other things since 1996 when I wrote it.
Oh,
But it's
for
fascinating.
me, that's
So
astonishing, isn't it? I mean, it's where identity politics has taken us, sadly, particularly those of us on the left, where experience and expertise has got, they're no longer dancing, they're sort of in warfare, really, aren't they, Martin?
yeah, I mean, very much. It became quite difficult. I was writing a piece on grime, and it was a chapter on grime, and I
Yeah.
was really looking at grime with New Labour and the policies around it that New Labour developed around supporting the arts, the creative arts, and directing money towards certain communities. And my discussion was that look, this funding enabled something really powerful to grow. And then I quickly became aware of, hang on, this is pretty well saying this thing couldn't have existed without being gifted money by a predominantly white middle class group of people. And that's a very different narrative. But it became very, I wanted to be very sensitive to that narrative as well.
Yeah.
And in the end, I thought this isn't actually a chapter. Can only be part of a book. Otherwise, it's going to that one singular narrative is going to be spun out of control.
Yeah, I think you've handled that brilliantly. That's what a book can do because it can add granularity and complexity so that I mean, we live in times, Brexit, Trump, the binary oppositions are clear, the ideologies are clear. You're either with us or you're against us. We're in that sort of, the enemy within types of argument. Now, if you're wanting more complicated arguments to be presented, the book is the place to do that. And you've certainly undertaken in very difficult times some very complicated arguments. And this is where I wanted you've talked about, my brain is going to be working all day after this, but you've talked about those spaces that you don't know exist and then suddenly appear. and these incredibly creative forces emerge from them, these spaces that we didn't even know existed. And that leads to my next question about, we've talked about the arts, creative industries, cultural industries, and so forth, cultural policy as well. Big hi to Justin. And you've worked a lot in your career with industry partnerships and industry collaborations. Now, this worries me at times. At the moment, the word stakeholder is used in universities like a form of institutional Tourette's, like when in doubt, stakeholder, stakeholder, stakeholder. But you've, through particularly your popular music journalism programs, done these proper engagements between universities and industry. So could you tell us about how you rendered these relationships authentic and meaningful?
Okay, so first of all, I'd say I did this because I had a fantastic team. So it wasn't me on my own at any point. And a lot of the work was in partnership with my fantastic colleague, Dr. Chris Anderton, who does amazing work as well. And we originally, right, there's a number of different projects, but probably the biggest one was the festivals project. And we had a festival going on just up the road in Winchester, which was actually a massive rave. And I knew the people running it. And I said, look, let's get the students in. Let's turn it into the university in a field. So we had the tent, the Solent tent, and we had 300 students meaningfully employed across the site doing various things. And it wasn't just music journalism. We had the sports people in as well. You were doing health, and I mean there was a whole range of different things. And I took the vice chancellor at the time around the site, and this is a notorious rave called Glade. And I'm going, look, this is the university in action. That's this area. Look what's going on in reality. We could do this. We could actually create our own festival. And he was really behind it because it turned out his daughter was a dubstep producer in Barcelona and got it straight away. Love that. And so in the meantime, I developed a number of partnerships. Now, what it is me phoning up friends. I've been working in the music industry since I was 14, right? This is another story for another time, but at the age of 14, I ran away from home to follow the Clash. That's why I failed my O levels. And my life has been involved in music people. So
You are that credible. I mean, I didn't think I could be more impressed. I didn't know that after all these years. I didn't know that
right.
story, Martin. That's unbelievable. Please continue.
Well, I'll follow. I then followed Susan the Banshees and then the Psychedelic Furs in their early days. But anyway, that's another story. But so I phoned friends up. I said, listen. What about us? Me bringing students into the field, and we'll develop ways of them making sure they're working. So I'll develop a program for each area, and we're not assessing them. It's not about assessment. This is about students bringing their learning to life, but also gaining the kind of messy experience that we can't create in a classroom. You can't create through normal work experience. This is the situation where students, you're in the middle of a muddy field and you've been given a decision to make. Use that analysis now. Make those decisions now. And it was so successful. We ended up with having partnerships. Again, there's that word,
Mm,
agreements, friendships with 16 universities. Sorry, 16 festivals,
yeah.
and we ranging from creating their programs through to filming everything, making documentaries. We got involved in the legal side. I mean, you name it. There were students there doing it, and what a lot of them did was locked into that area of the music industries. And the whole thing behind everything I've done is this idea. It really annoys me when people talk about music being playing a guitar. Now, music can kind of get somewhere with it, but I always said, well, actually, it's part of a very interconnected web,
Exactly
and
right.
be a successful anything, you've got to engage with and understand that web. And this is what universities get so wrong. They create these courses, these music courses, for example, where they teach students to be masterful guitarists, for instance, who have no understanding of the world that's about to eat them up. Or
Exactly right.
and and this again was one of the reasons why we insisted on in the course structures. There was 50% theory, and that's not music theory; it's cultural theory, media theory, and so on,
Yeah,
and some more social theory, because that's about decision making. That's about analysis. That's about the depth of understanding. We had business running through everything as well,
absolutely.
because and this is again what universities get so wrong, thinking that only business people can be business, only business
And
students can.
only law students do law, entertainment law, sports law, music law gets lost. I mean, your courage in really showing the web around the music industry. I don't think I've ever told you this as overtly as this. The music book I wrote was inspired by the curriculum and the work that you were doing at Southampton Solent, and the breadth and the depth and the complexity of that book going into all these different crevices of culture came from your curricular inspiration, that this is how the teaching and the learning in music, this is how it looks, team. And you were ahead of the game. You were ahead of the world in the work you were doing there. And I mean, should we talk about Smilefest a little bit? Because,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, for me, uh, what happened at Southampton Solent, you and your wonderful team made that university internationally famous. And one of the reasons they were so famous is because of Smilefest. So it was a music festival, and you've talked about the importance of the festivals. But what I think made it important, and I'll quote you back to you, you describe this as, quote, university in action. Now, I
mm,
love that a lot, but where I'm interested, reflecting back on it now, mate, is how do you think about the relationship between music industries in the plural and academic industries in the plural, and how they conflate?
that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
Um, um, okay, so we'll start with Smilefest.
Mm,
Smilefest could only happen with a certain mindset. So it needed a team with a mindset to make it happen, to make it make it become something. So Smilefest, imagine, starts as a conference, then becomes a conference with multi-venue festival, then eventually an outdoor festival. It had student challenges, it had student advice sessions, surgeries, and also it was open to the public. So it was doing all these things at the same time. 10 years we ran it. Each year is how can we make that even bigger? How can we improve on that? But at the before the actual main thing about it is it was student owned. So at no point would I turn around to students and say, "Hey, you need to have a drum and bass tent." Or you've got to do this, this, and this. Now we're nudging towards the things that were really important that had to be there, that would support perhaps funding and so on. But what the shape of it every year was student driven. And that's what universities don't let happen. So we built this fantastic idea, and then the university went, "Oh, after 10 years, and it's being internationally recognized and being written about in the national press,
absolutely.
oh, we need to take control of this now." So I invited everybody to the launch for the tenth anniversary one. So I had all the top brass down there, and I said, "Right, this is the very last one we'll ever do. From next year, we're reframing it, we're recalling it So Music City. It's a collaboration with the university up the road and the following people, local organisations, including the council." That was a "you've just stolen it from under our noses" moment. No, so when I said no, this is actually a moment to embrace your civic responsibility and work closely with the city. we actually have a city that's on the verge of collapse in terms of its creative industries or creativity,
Yes.
um, because of the funding structures. Because I could go on for hours about everything that's wrong about the way the arts is funded in the UK and how
Absolutely.
it creates these little powerhouses of funding groups who define culture in their own eyes. Uh, and um, So we did this, and unfortunately got shut down, but by COVID for the second year. But the first year it was a massive success. It was a
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm really proud of what we did. But shut now, the signs were there, right? I knew they wanted it, and what would have happened is they would take it in house. We'll create our festival. At the same time, we had the City of Culture bid starting to emerge.
Yeah.
Now, we had two different things. The original person or team doing the City of Culture bid was very on side. I worked really closely with him. This was very much a part of developing that as meeting people, going to various communities, bringing people with us, developing confidence and trust and all those things that are so important. And then a new team came in and said, no, we know what City of Culture is and what it is, what it does best. Bam. City University said, um, you can head up the research side, research and knowledge exchange side of our City of Culture bid. I said, well, yeah, okay, it's part of my professorial role. Um, but it was fascinating to see it from the inside. And one day I will write this up.
Yeah.
It was fascinating to see why we lost because we could have won, but we lost because a version of culture was forced down from above
There it
rather
is.
than coming from below. We were back into that space where people from below, and that's what the cultural industries were doing. That's what the universities were doing. So really, really awful for me situation where as a
Oh,
university wanting to develop its own foothold here and being important. In doing that, it crushed the very things that were being successful that were coming from the academics up and presented their own versions. And then you had the local council, so the council putting all their eggs into the basket of the City of Culture team, and they kind of squeezed the life out of everything. It
there it is.
became a really divestive. And okay, during COVID, it was hard for everybody. And we did most of the research during COVID, but it was the most dispiriting process to go through to see how nobody was interested in truths.
No,
And I don't mean that about this is my truth,
no,
but
no.
there were certain things that about Southampton's culture, cultural history, that was suppressed in order to make other parts seem more powerful. And you can't do that. When you're telling a
No.
cultural history of a city, you have to own the issues. You have to own the bad as well as the good.
Look, you have to, and you know, I do a lot of work, a lot of my work at the moment with music, with sport is about regional development. And what you've just described so brilliantly is this top-down policy functionality rather than looking at doing. Remember the old days, 20 years ago, we used to talk about cultural mapping and we used to start bottom up. What actually is in existence? What is here? What is this bottom up? And that's the innovative, that's the innovation, not the top down. This is the way people,
Yeah.
citizens, economy, regional development should be enacting. So you've just captured that brilliantly, and I can't wait for you to write that up. That's going to be crucial, I think.
I've got to say,
But
Tara, I've got to
go
say
ahead,
here,
mate, please.
sorry. Um, the mapping thing, we actually
Yeah,
started a mapping project with the students really early on and mapped the city of Southampton's music industries then started looking at the broader web and the ecology or the ecosystem. And the new City of Culture people came in and ignored my research and actually employed a very good friend of mine, Shane Shapiro, and he does some fabulous work at sound diplomacy, but employed sound diplomacy to do the same piece of work, but with nowhere near the depth of results that we had. Go figure. I
Yeah, and
wasn't a
look,
part
we've
of the.
all of us have done this work. You did that work in Southampton. Steve obviously did it in Manchester. I did it in Perth. These studies are precious. These are the filaments of life. They're
Yeah.
rare, they're precious, they're extraordinary. The three of us used postgraduate students that were younger than us, that were also part of the cultures they were writing about. These are important books. They're rare books, these ones, but these projects are crucial. And when you crush them out of existence, those cultures lose their credibility, they lose their energy, and they lose the propulsive capacity to make change because
Yes.
they're being repressed, right? Amazing, mate.
Yeah.
Can we go to a tough question now? And I apologize for asking it, but not really. Okay, not really, because I really want the answer to this question, but answer it in a way that you are comfortable. Okay, that's important. When you were professor at Southampton Solent, you were one of the professors on the planet that changed popular cultural studies, full stop. And you'll be known for that for the rest of your life. And when we're all dead and gone, you were and are that important. But then you left that professorship. Now, so many of us have to leave universities that were our heart, that were our passion. Can you tell us about that decision and if and how from a job like that you move on personally, intellectually, and professionally?
Okay, so that's actually a really big question, and really you're summing up the last 2 years of my life. Um, just about 2 years ago, November, so just November gone. Um, the provost asked me in for a meeting and said, "Well, we didn't get the City of Culture bid, and and you're not doing enough teaching. So I've got to make a business case for you." I said, "Well, the problem is you took me off research. You took me off my activities to do the City of Culture bid. So I haven't got any live things I'm working on. There's one that fell apart because I didn't have enough time to give to it. It's also it wasn't the easiest time to raise funding during COVID.
No, no, no.
If it's a COVID-based project, and then and also hit a bit of a wall during COVID as well. Like actually for about 6 months I couldn't read or write. So I literally couldn't sit with it. But anyway, um, so that's it. So you've put me into this position now where I'm short on hours, teaching hours, because we didn't win the bid, and I haven't done put any bids in for myself, any research applications. So just bear with me, right? So comes to the following March, there's been a restructure. There's every 30 seconds in the universities there's a restructure that basically means there's a new genius that's going to work out to save money. But actually how we're saving money is by keeping the expensive bits that we're pouring money down the drain. Anyway, I got my at risk notice. And I was the senior professor, the lead professor, and so really I was the most expensive academic in the university at a time when they're trying to save money. So in that way, on a purely business grounds, I completely understood. But they came at me for my lack of teaching, and I said, "Well, you created that as constructed." Um, they didn't include my PhDs. They didn't include any of this, and offered me the voluntary severance, as universities do. You can have voluntary severance, but um, yeah, we'll lose that if you challenge this. There was actually a very clear case of constructive dismissal, but I'm not going to take it any further because I haven't got the money, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the energy. it was an ironic thing that well, it's not ironic, it was actually quite worrying that I'd just been diagnosed with ADHD and had also declared that that was a month later I got my risk notice. And there's a song, Nostalgia Deathstar track, which is exactly about this, my first at risk notice meeting, where the line manager, who by the way was two scales below me, and in fact, on the university structure, I sat next to the dean, and my line manager was, you know, it wasn't an issue until it became this issue. And he's reading the statement to me in this really robotic voice. And at the end of it, he said, in the same voice, without me taking a breath, "How do you feel? It's important to us. You understand. We care how you feel." Well, I thought I'm using that, and I did. But
Yeah, I know you did.
it was possibly the most dehumanizing experience of my life. It was the moment of years of hard work, years of trying to put a small university on the map, years of devoting ridiculous time to every aspect of my job were absolutely meaningless. They meant nothing. And that's the feeling that you're left with in that process. And I know you've been through quite dehumanizing things as well. Um, because I was just recently diagnosed, my head was all over the place.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I couldn't construct a clean argument, a clean discussion. And I went down into these obsessive wormholes which were completely irrelevant. Um, which I'm in a very different space now, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, also at the same time, I've just been given offered the visiting professor at Derby University. So I was in this strange, and there was a potential. I was asked. Just been approached by one of the universities in Singapore, the Tech University, and I was like, "You're joking." I, and I'll never forget this. In my first meeting with the provost, he said to me, "For a professor, you're very quiet." I said, "What?" He says, "You're not very in the media. I expect my professors to be in the media." And I said, "I was literally in the biggest magazine in Croatia. I had a 5-page cover feature this week." Oh, that's Croatia.
Look, I mean, I knew some of that narrative. I didn't know that in that detail. And look, I've got a couple of things to say. First thing I need to say to you, and again, this has never been spoken publicly, so we're doing the really deep
No,
stuff
no,
here, Martin. But I needed to tell you, and I know Steve, bless him, wherever he is in any hell or heaven environment, he would want me to say to you, and he never spoke of it, and I never spoke of it, but he was at MMU, Manchester Metropolitan University, for 32 years. And they
yeah,
put him through a process as well. And it was so bitter and angry and horrific at the end. They wouldn't even give him an emeritus professorship at the end. He literally packed his stuff into a box and got on a Northern Rail service. That was the end of 32 years at MMU, when again, very
a
much like
rock.
what you did, he put MMU on the map, right? So
Totally.
there's the disrespect of endings. You've often heard me say beginnings matter, but endings matter more. From that ending, I'll just ask this terrible question. You can go, no, shut up, Tara. What do you do from that ending, Martin? How do you mentally, personally, physically, professionally stand up again? How do you move forward, mate?
Well, it's taken a long time. I'm gonna be honest with you, Tara.
Mm,
It was not just a body blow. It was a blow to my confidence,
yeah.
confidence in my ideas, my own intelligence, my own knowledge. I found myself in a position where I'm letting editors down with writing because I can't. I was at a roadblock, a mental roadblock with everything.
Mm.
And this is because the sense of worthlessness is was really quite profound. And then but I said also I'm not in the position, even in mind, I'm not in the position to be able to say I can't work anymore. I've got my youngest is still going through university, medical school, and and I've still got two older children, but also, me and my partner, we were in the creative industry, creative arts, before we went and came into academia. We're not loaded, you know. And we haven't got lots of money tucked away. I didn't have that hit single that I always thought I'd have. Um,
There's still time.
there's still time. Oh yeah, I still work on it, as you know. But so I took a job. I applied out for everything, and I wasn't getting a sniff at any professor jobs, any chairs, any role, anything I was going for, any managerial jobs, even though I had done these things. And then well, it was a Sunday afternoon, and the deadline 4 o'clock, Coventry University. I sat down at 2 o'clock, and said, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and I just literally bashed it out, and I had no passion for it, and I got an interview. I got offered an interview, got offered the job, and I took the job. Um, Assistant professor is not a professorial role, as I discovered not during my interview when I asked, but when I started work and discovered that it was actually a senior lecturer role. So lie number one, no,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
nothing professorial about it. Um, and then I was told when I started that just to stop research. Well, okay, that time I'm comfortable with that for a little while. I need a break. I needed the break. So I've immersed myself in teaching. Now, there's a supreme, unbearable, or claustrophobic level of um, bureaucratic psychosis in that university, and I don't mean that. There again, like as with Solent, there are some wonderful people.
There are
I've met some amazing people
wonderful scholars.
in the academics, the support teams, some incredible people across the whole piece. But there's something structural deep within it that possibly comes from the top. I don't know, and it's not for
Yeah.
me to care about the upper echelons of yeah. I've no ambition to be a vice chancellor. I've left that one 22 years too late now. um, but what it's done for me is actually I've gone through a phase of so for the first semester there, I was like, oh my God, I've forgotten this stuff. And now I say every senior academic, every senior member of staff should go back and write a module again. Everybody should go back and remember how to put together a good assessment brief with proper working criteria, meaningful criteria. Everybody should do this because I had a wake up call because I thought, oh, I know this. So that was a really positive thing. It's given me the opportunity to get to go to delve into people again that I haven't really looked at. Um, I have a big problem with media studies, communication studies courses, in that this over obsession with McLuhan, this over obsession with the Frankfurt School, this over obsession because that's what we were taught in 1992. So I went there and said, okay, listen, we're in the midst of the biggest revolution. Our students coming in today, the world would have changed when they graduate. So at least I can reflect that in my teaching. And so I've taken a couple of modules, and one in particular, and really turned it inside out and brought in lots of new ideas, and then some kind of quite exciting ideas, like for instance the zombie university or zombification, like Uberification from Gary Hall, these sort of uh, really exciting things, ways of looking at this stuff, and actually saying, um, what's this saying about now? What are these things? forget McLuhan and the t-shirt. We know the medium is the message, and we know it's used wrong over and over and over again. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of that idea again and peel it apart and actually look at it through Zizek. Let's actually apply the thinkers of now. So this module has just got 100% from the students, and they loved it. And it was really pushing at some quite hard ideas, as you know, and I'm always been told that students aren't really interested in that anymore.
Wrong.
Yeah, they want to make podcasts. I know they want to make podcasts and do social media, but they also want to think. But it's about finding the spark to make them, to encourage them, to help them understand their own power.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's
Wow.
lost. That's been lost in modern universities. It's lost. It's this because we have got this obsessive rush towards the new, this obsessive rush towards I don't know, the new fad. It's like TikTok fads all the time. So this week, what's this week's thing we're obsessed with? Oh, everybody's going to have an AI course. No, we don't need to have AI courses. We need to investigate AI, and we need to use those investigate to peel away all the different ways of looking at things. We've got to stop hiving off everything and start saying, actually, the real world is much messier. Going back to the network, the web, we have got to bring it together. We've got to actually make these exciting spaces where students actually feel they're relevant to their lives, and they're fast spaces with slow moments. Now, this is the
Huge.
exciting thing finding. What I'm finding is that this, we've both done a lot about accelerated media, accelerated culture, but slow culture is becoming so powerful.
Yeah.
And so it's bringing that is it's rhythm. It's all about rhythm.
It is the space between the notes. Also, I'm getting deeply interested in, I've got all sorts of shapes around the house at the moment about corrugated iron development. I'm very interested. I'm also, you and I are both interested in mess, in messiness. And you don't walk away from the mess. You don't wallpaper over the mess. You get in the mess and you revel in the mess. And speaking of somebody who's really provided the soundtrack for everything you've talked about there, you know where I'm going now. Okay, this is the bit of the post where, look, I'm just going to be this terrible fangirl. Okay. I have lost my mind. So you and the legendary Sean have created this band duo performance art experiment, Nostalgia Deathstar. Now, I recommend for all the viewers out there, look for it. YouTube. I live on YouTube. There's a Facebook site bit. There's also on Spotify. Every Saturday morning is when I listen to Nostalgia Deathstar. Okay. When I'm cleaning the kitchen Saturday morning, that is my time. Okay. And I want to talk about, and really we need to probably thank Bowie and the Pet Shop Boys for having
Oh,
this
for sure.
incredible experience. But my favourite song, and we'll get to your favourite song because I want to hear everything about how the hell this happened. But my favourite song is Human Resource, right?
Right.
Process. You're just a process. I mean, I listen to that about 5 times in a row every Saturday morning. So could you tell us about how the hell this thing happened and why perhaps it captures who you are and what we've talked about so far and perhaps where you're going as well?
Okay, so initially it started as out of love of music. Me and Sean were sitting in an office together, and we discovered we've got the mutual love of so many of the same artists, and I knew we had anyway. Really, we're both huge Bowie fans, that's for sure. Um, but I was actually in a really dark space, and he said, "You need to sing. You need to make music again. You've forgotten you're a musician." And him and another colleague at the time, Ruth Dockeray, who is a brilliant virtuoso violinist who we haven't yet got onto one of our songs, but we will soon. They convinced me that I really need to start making music. And this Bowie Memorial Night was coming up, and Sean said, "Let's do it. Let's go for it. And let's do something that the students won't necessarily want to do." So we did Hello Space Boy. Tried to do the Pet Shop Boys version. So, and that was it. That was the beginning. So it started being the most ridiculous name we could think of, but actually, it was quite a lot of meaning in it.
Yes.
The whole nostalgia um, I don't really like the idea of looking back all the time. I think it can be far too seductive, and it kind of blinds you to a lot of what's going on in the here and now and
Yes.
what is potentially in front of us. Um, and so the first one of our songs from the first version, it was called Dead 80s, and it was the most 80s sounding synth pop song on the record. It's possibly one of my most listened to songs, and it's "Don't Look Back" in the rear view mirror. Don't look back. And it's it wasn't all that great, the 80s. No, we kind of like to pretend now that it was marvelous, fantastic. We're all in giant shoulder pads, and no, no, it was hard. It was hard times, the 80s,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't want to live some of it again.
No.
Um, Best parties at the end of the 80s, anyway. And it started with amazing parties at the Blitz Club and ended with amazing free parties. But there's a lot of bits in between that were hard, hard slog.
Yeah.
And the Death Star side of it was okay. People of a certain age, I will say predominantly men, to be honest, but people of a certain age are obsessed with Star Wars. Put the two together, so it's kind of anti-nostalgia, and yeah, Death Star. What's it? And everybody instantly assumed that we were writing soundtracks for Star Wars, but no, not at all. It was quite the opposite. It was kind of a statement of it was great for you. It had its moment. Yeah, I loved Star Wars, but actually, look around now.
Yeah.
You know, don't
Yeah.
dismiss the new Doctor Who because
Yeah.
you love the old Doctor Who. You know what I'm saying? So that
And
was that
remember
was
what the
the
Death Star did to Alderaan too. Please always remember
exactly
that.
exactly. So this became in some ways it's a pub name. Everybody forms a band in a pub. Had a few drinks. A stupid name of a band, and it's stuck, and it's still with us. So the first album was really we recorded it through lockdown. The first song was Europa Dystopia, which was released on the day of leaving Brexit,
Yeah.
of the actual signature, and it's a absolute anti-Brexit song. Leaving Brexit, leaving Europe. I mean, anti-Brexit. So we were absolutely both so angry about it, and so we said we've got to write this thing, and then we did. We wrote a song a month for the rest of the year. It was just really experiment, have fun, see what we can do within the pop form. And each song there'd be a meaning behind it. I can't
Yeah.
write straightforward lyrics. And then we then took a layoff for a while, and I did another project. He did another project, and we've been working on the new stuff. And the new stuff goes back to a conversation we had maybe 7 or 8 years ago, where we started saying the university is not the university anymore.
Yeah.
The things are changing, and okay, the neoliberalism of universities. And we decided we're going to do a project on this at some point. So this is turned into this huge thing. So it's possibly 2 albums worth now. It's in homage to Leonard Cohen. Part one's They Want It Darker. Part two, They Stole the Flame. And so far, you've had like I say, the human resource, which was my immediate response to that situation. We've got one coming out called ZU. That's possibly the next single in January. Which is Zombie University, and in its opening lines, it's just a husk. It's been hollowed out,
Yeah. Oh, this is
and
unbelievable.
that's
So is this becoming the Nostalgia Deathstar University? Because I'm obsessed by that. I have because I'm writing a book at the moment on the Claustropolitan
yeah.
University, and I've got a holding chapter. What I'm hoping will be an interesting NDU, not Notre Dame, indeed.
No,
But
exactly.
so is this the Nostalgia Deathstar University? Is that project?
So this is the project, yes.
This
So
is
we're setting up a website that's going to be a pastiche of a university website. So we're going to have lots and lots of people smiling nicely and happily, and pictures of an imaginary city looking amazingly incredible. And like all students have got to come and live here. The usual devices that universities use to bring students in, rather than saying, actually, you've got some brilliant thinkers, you've got some fantastic teachers, you're gonna really grow here if you really want to apply your brilliant minds to this. But instead it's come here and get endlessly drunk all the time. That's a part of it. But the motto on the bottom of the logo that we knocked up, and it's I've written it down. Scientia productum est ust imit. Knowledge is a product to be bought. So we create with each song is going to be its own module or its own course, and I actually wanted to say let's create the NDU Press, which is effectively the record label and the book publishing company that we've already done anyway, and all the stuff that Sean's doing, and I'm really excited by this idea of why worry. I stopped going to mainstream publishers with my music books 10, 15 years ago. Why am I bothering with to try and fit in some narrow ref straitjacket? If there's something exciting enough to make me or any of my friends, any of my colleagues go, yeah, let's investigate this, do it for the joy and the love of investigation, let's share it with the love of sharing it.
this is going to change the world. And of course, I'm
Anti-neoliberal. So it's
I'm obsessed
anti-neoliberal.
by this because also, see, I see the Nostalgia Deathstar University sort of the good side of the force, and of course, we've got the bad side of the force with Andrew Tate having bought university.com.
No,
Oh, yes, no, he bought that.
no, I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, so this
Oh,
is why I've got this holding pattern in the book to have you and Sean with Nostalgia Death Star University and university.com with Andrew Tate. And so this is the revisioning of the university in claustropolitan ways, in claustropolitan times. So that's helping me enormously. Oh, you keep going. And so I need to do the final question because I've taken enough of your time on
I've
your
got to ask
Sunday
you
night.
one. I've got to
Oh,
say one thing
please,
to you.
one,
Sorry,
go for it, Martin.
one question. There's a track ZU, Zombie University, which you haven't yet heard, which you will be getting sent it for, soon. Got a little sample in it, or a section in it, where it's got somebody talking about how vice chancellors of universities no longer have PhDs, and yet they're making decisions about curricula.
I wonder who
Which
said
on
that, Martin.
one of your podcasts. So we need to get your agreement for it, but we're going to send it through to you, hopefully you'll be a visiting professor on our.
You have a
On
deal. You've changed my life. Look, so yes, you can have it. You can have anything that's ever been said in the history of the world. And can I say at the moment, I'll just sort of do a little bit of a sideline for you. At the moment, I'm going through every Australian university to try and find the PhD of a vice chancellor who says he's got a PhD, and I've been unable to locate it at this time.
it's just it's shocking. It's disgusting.
Yeah. And of
Yeah.
course, these are the people that are then doing research misconduct investigations as well. So so you are the right man, so is Sean, the right man at the right place, the right time. But I need to ask the final question. And again, this is a tough
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Here we go, right? So answer it again to your level of comfort. Now, you've seen the best and you've seen the worst of international higher education, and you are still upright. But we have a lot of colleagues that watch this channel who are PhD students, early career researchers, mid career researchers, a lot of our senior colleagues around the world, brother. What would you say to them about the nature of work in the contemporary university sector?
Um, I think it's quite toxic, the work environment right now. We have an era of management who have learned to manage through the worst kind of management. So they're applying forms of managerial control almost, because they think that's the way to be. So there's a huge amount of managerial performativity going on. So what I'd say, I wouldn't, at the same time, I wouldn't say to anybody, do not go into academia, but don't play the games. Certain advice, try and retain control of your own narrative. Be aware that if you're a threat, people will narrativize against you. And once you have a narrative about you, it's really hard to lose. Be aware of this. But at the same time, you can't shut down. You can't become an isolated person. Um, be the team, be in the team, be a part of the team. Always be collaborative, because that's how you break down toxicity. If we're all always collaborative, at one point in my life, have I ever looked down on another colleague. Colleagues do brilliant work. They do their brilliant work. Younger colleagues sometimes need support and guidance, and that's what old heads should be doing. We have a crazy environment now where that's sometimes called patronizing, but it's not. It's like it's encouragement.
It's
I've got
care.
a want. It's
I-
fear. It's I
Infrastructure of care. Yeah.
what we are. We have to be educators. Full stop. To be researchers. Full stop. You've got to have a love and a care and this generosity of spirit. Now, I'd say to anybody coming in, it's hard. Never lose that, though. If you let go of the essence of what makes us human, just so you can perform being a manager, then you might as well go and work in IKEA. Actually, I think people may be happier in IKEA right now. But the UK system right now, we're 10,000 people made redundant in a year. We've had numbers at long time of absolute mismanagement from government, and mismanagement within, and we're probably in terms of our wealth of ideas, we've never been more impoverished in British universities, because I think brilliant scholars are leaving, brilliant scholars aren't coming in. But what we're creating is a mass production, a repetition of the same, of the same, of the same, without wanting, it's the ever same. We're back in the cultural industries again. It's this endless, because somebody at some point has gone, that's how universities will make money.
And it's just not true. And I mean,
Just not true.
none of us got into this business to work for Ford.
Exactly. Being measured, this whole thing. I mean, I don't know if you've been following the news about universities here, and a lot of the ways politicians and the business people are talking about is that we're not meeting our targets. What are my targets? I'm teaching your children. The targets are, if they're not able to get amazing jobs afterwards, that's because you guys haven't done your job to create a powerful economy for them to succeed in. But we're doing our side of things, and
Oh,
and I've also seen, and it's been quite depressing for new PhDs and so on. But
mm.
I've seen the degradation of respect for knowledge, for expertise. And that's not just outside. And I expect it from the Tates of this world, and all of I expect it from populist politics, but it's happening inside the university now. Who needs that kind of stuff? How's a student going to get a job after reading? Oh, what's this? Oh, Zizek. How's a student getting a job after that? What do you mean? Do you think the policymakers never did? Do you think the people who are actually the philosophers that are working in these environments aren't still embracing great thinkers or sharp thinkers? don't, and I think this is my sorry, and I've got to be. There's a positive in here though.
Yes.
There is a massive positive. The project that goes well, the brings in the results. The piece of writing when you post some of your publication, that amazing feeling of there's a new publication, opening up a book, the box, unboxing, the smell of fresh print in the morning, the feeling of coming out of a lecture when you've given a lecture and students have sparked on it and you've really it's been great, or even the feeling when you've done a not so great lecture but you've taken lots of mental notes. I know what I'm going to do different next time. Make these into real notes. Those feelings are like nothing else on earth. Bearing in mind, I was in the music industry, in the media industry before, there's not been any better highs than those feelings.
So powerful. And I've learned so much through this conversation, Martin. But one thing I really want to just, while it's fresh in my mind, I want to log for myself as a sonic note is I think you and I are both surprised because we never expected anti-intellectualism in a university. And that is what we are living. So, Martin, I just want to say to you, thank you for this conversation. I found it very healing for me. You're a great mate. And I just want to say something publicly that I've never said before. A lot of people may not know, but as you know, Steve, when he died, pancreatic cancer, he kept it all very quiet. And I announced his death on the night of his death. And the silence after somebody dies is basically, catastrophic, as we all know. But you were there the hour after he died, the day after he died, and you've been there ever since. And if you read his obituary, in the Times Higher Education, there is a certain Professor Martin James who, when called to offer a comment, offered a remarkable paragraph about a remarkable man. And you are a remarkable man, Martin. I need to thank you for your friendship and your kindness in really difficult times. So I need to thank you. I need to wish your wonderful family a happy Christmas. I
You.
thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. I love chatting to you, as ever.
Oh,
Love it.
you're amazing. And we both wish you for Christmas and 2025 love, light, and peace. Take care, team. Bye bye.
Yeah.